Close your eyes for a second. Imagine waking up tomorrow and discovering that everything you know, your name, your freedom, your family, belongs to someone else. Not metaphorically, literally. You are property, a legal object, worth less than a horse, valued like furniture. And your children? Their inventory before they're even born. This isn't a thought experiment. For millions of people across nearly 250 years of American history, this was reality. And here's what nobody tells you. The system was so methodically designed, so psychologically devastating, that even thinking about freedom could get you killed. Today, we're walking through a day in the life of an enslaved person in 1850s America. Every detail is documented, every horror verified. It's 4:30 a.m. Still dark. You don't wake up to an alarm. You wake up to the sound of a horn blasting across the plantation. Your body aches from yesterday's work, but that doesn't matter. You have about 15 minutes before roll call. You sleep on a wooden plank in a cabin that houses 12 other people. No privacy, no beds. The fireplace barely works. And in winter, you've watched children freeze to death in the night. Your blanket is a single rough cloth that doesn't cover your whole body. Every night you choose, keep your feet warm or your chest warm. Never both. But here's what's really messing with your head. You're not even sure how old you are. Most enslaved people never knew their birth dates. Enslavers didn't record them. Why would they? You don't write down when you bought a shovel. One man interviewed in the 1930s said he figured out he was about 80 because he remembered when a famous racehorse won a particular race as a child. That's how you measure your existence when you're not considered human. You step outside. The overseer is already on his horse, watching. Always watching. Roll call isn't just attendance. It's psychological warfare. Everyone lines up, and the overseer counts you like livestock, because legally, that's exactly what you are. Between 1820 and 1860, roughly 1 million enslaved people were forcibly relocated through domestic slave trade, with about 25% of marriages destroyed by sale. By 5 a.m., you're in the fields. Cotton season. You have a quota, 150 to 200 pounds per day. Doesn't sound hard. Cotton bolls shred your fingers. The plants are low, so you're bent over for 12 to 16 hours straight. Your back feels like it's breaking. Your hands bleed through the calluses. Pick 200 pounds today? That's your new minimum tomorrow. It's a trap that tightens every single day. Fall short, and you're whipped. Sometimes in front of your children, specifically to traumatize them into compliance. Plantation ledgers show exactly who was whipped, how many lashes, and why. Short 15 pounds, written in neat handwriting, like bookkeeping, which, to them, it was. But let's talk about what they don't teach. Resistance. You're not passive. None of you are. Enslaved people developed sophisticated methods of subtle resistance. Working slowly, breaking tools, accidentally, feigning illness. Historical records document cases of enslaved people damaging cotton gins with rocks, contaminating crops, even poisoning enslavers' food. One woman named Celia, enslaved in Missouri, was repeatedly raped by her enslaver. In 1855, she killed him. She argued self-defense at trial. The court ruled that enslaved people had no right to defend themselves from owners. She was executed, but her resistance echoed through history. Every fiber of cotton in your sack is profit you'll never see. Wealth you're building for someone who considers you subhuman. Around noon, you get 30 minutes. The food? Cornmeal, sometimes salted pork. Daily rations were about 3 to 4 pounds of cornmeal and half a pound of pork per week. Studies of enslaved people's remains show severe malnutrition, vitamin deficiencies, stunted growth. But here's what's burning in your mind. Your daughter turns 7 next week. 7 is when children start full days in the fields. Until now, she's been watched by elderly enslaved people too old for hard labor. Soon, she'll be out here. And you can't stop it. You can't protect her. This helplessness is its own torture. The system wasn't just labor extraction. It was spiritual destruction. Frederick Douglass wrote that enslavers gave enslaved people alcohol during Christmas, encouraging them to get drunk, then pointed to this behavior as proof of inferiority. Gaslighting on a societal scale. But you're doing something they don't see. You're teaching your daughter to read. This is a death sentence if caught. In most southern states, teaching enslaved people to read was illegal, punishable by whipping, mutilation, or sale. Why? Because literacy meant access to information. Abolition movements forged travel passes to escape. One man named John Washington learned to read by trading food with poor white children. He escaped and wrote his autobiography. His enslaver never knew he was literate until he was already free. You hide a Bible in your cabin. Every night by firelight, you teach your daughter letters. This is rebellion. This is hope. The sun sets around 8 p.m. You've worked 15 hours. Your quota was met, barely. The overseer weighs your sack and waves you away without a word. No acknowledgement. You're a machine that performed adequately, but you're not done. Enslaved people did their own cooking, mending, maintenance after field work. Women often worked another 2 to 3 hours. Men repaired tools or hunted to supplement meager rations. Tonight, something's different. There's a whisper through the quarters. Someone escaped. You don't know who. Nobody's saying names because some enslaved people, broken by the system, become informants. But someone ran. Your heart races. The punishment for recaptured escapees was unspeakable. Severe whipping, branding, sometimes toe amputation. Some enslavers bred dogs specifically to hunt humans. But part of you is inspired. The Underground Railroad wasn't a formal organization. It was a loose network of safe houses and brave people risking everything. Harriet Tubman made 13 missions and rescued approximately 70 people. She was armed, had $1 million bounty in today's money, and never lost a passenger. Tonight's escapee probably doesn't have Underground Railroad contacts. Most didn't. Most escaped alone with nothing but the North Star. Between 1810 and 1850, around 100,000 people escaped, though exact numbers are impossible. You lie down. Your daughter curls beside you. You think about that person running through darkness, and the word enslavers fear most: freedom. 3 days later, you learn what happened. They were caught, 30 miles away, so close. The enslaver makes everyone watch the punishment. Mandatory, children included, 100 lashes. You count every one because looking away means punishment. The sound haunts you for years. Your daughter buries her face in your side. This image now burned into her mind forever. This is terrorism, using extreme violence against one to control everyone through fear. But something unexpected happens. That night, someone starts singing. A spiritual. Others join. Within minutes, everyone's singing. The overseer storms out, but stops. You're singing Christian hymns. How can he punish religion? But you all know what you're really singing. Wade in the water wasn't just baptism. It was instructions to walk in streams so dogs couldn't track scent. Swing low, sweet chariot referenced the Underground Railroad. Steal away to Jesus meant secret meetings. The enslaver hears music. You hear strategy. Enslaved people still built culture despite everything. They created music that became jazz, blues, rock and roll. They developed storytelling like Br'er Rabbit tales, seemingly innocent, but actually teaching children to outsmart powerful enemies. They maintained spiritual practices blending African traditions with Christianity. They fell in love, married in secret ceremonies with no legal standing, but everything personal. Named children after ancestors. Laughed, celebrated, found joy in a system designed to destroy them. Here's the truth. Slavery didn't end because enslavers developed consciences. It ended because enslaved people never stopped resisting. They escaped, rebelled, sabotaged, survived, built networks, and raised children who knew they were human when the law said otherwise. When the Civil War came, nearly 200,000 formerly enslaved people joined the Union Army. They fought with weapons in their hands, burned the plantations that tortured them, freed their families. They didn't wait to be saved. They saved themselves. The American economy was built on this. Cotton picked by bleeding hands made millions for Northern mills and European fashion. Yale, Harvard, Brown, partially funded by slave trade money. The last person born into slavery died in 1971. That's closer to today than to the Civil War. The trauma still ripples forward. But so does the resistance. So does the culture. So does the unbreakable spirit that said, "You can own my body, but never my mind." That person picking cotton, teaching their daughter to read, listening to coded songs. That person fought for freedom every single day. Never forget that.